Hey guys, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with my guide for part 2 of the summer event in FGO NA. If you are still on part 1 of the event, I do have a guide for that as well. It will be linked in the description below, so make sure you check that out. You will also still be able to farm for Ascension materials and shop items in part 1, even though part 2 is starting, but you need to have finished part 1 in order to do part 2, so make sure you take care of that. And as usual, this guide will be going in depth, covering everything from the new gacha servants that we're going to get to in-depth farming strategies for the event. So I will link in the description below timestamps to different parts of the video so that you can skip around to whatever part of the video you need the most. Without further ado, let's talk about the new gacha servants. Of course, the first servant I should mention is Kahak Assassin. She is going to be the welfare for the event. You can unlock her permanently now as long as you complete the story for part 2. She is an AoE quick assassin with 9,049 attack and 11,168 HP. Very good for farming. As for what new servants we're getting in the gacha, first up we have Arturia Archer. She's a single target arch servant with 11,276 max attack and 14,553 max HP. Very strong servant. I'll be having a spotlight on her and the other two new servants coming up later on in the week, but suffice it to say she's one of the best archers in the game. Next up we have Marie Antoinette Caster. She is a 4-star arts caster with 9,060 attack and 11,404 HP. She focuses more on crit support, so if you do need a good crit support, you can roll for her. And finally, we have Martha Ruler. She is a ruler class servant, 4 stars, and buster focused. She has 9,546 attack and 11,250 HP. Very strong offensive ruler. If you're looking for a good ruler or a good extra servant, I highly recommend rolling for her. Of course, we're not just getting new servants, we're also getting new craft essences, so let's talk a bit about those. Just like with part 1, we will have 4 new craft essences. 3 of them are going to be in the gacha, and 1 is going to be available for purchase in the event shop. Going over the gacha craft essences first, we have the 3-star craft essence, Shaved Iced Void Dust flavor. It applies damage cut by 100 and increases debuff resist by 5%. It will also increase the Wood and Rialta Alloy drops by 1, and if you limit break it, it will apply damage cut by 200, increase debuff resist by 10%, and increase those drops by 2. And this can work on more tanky servants like Mosh and George, not bad. Next up we have the 4-star craft essence with the best name on the planet, Meat Wars. It restores 200 HP per turn and increases arch card effectiveness by 8%. It will also increase stone and air drum drop rates by 1. And if you limit break it, it'll restore 300 HP per turn, increase arch card effectiveness by 10%, and increase stone and Aeodorm drop rates by 2. Also good on more tanky arch servants like Mosh, George, Jean, Media Lily, and Iris Veal. Finally, the 5-star gacha craft essence is Knights of Marines. It'll increase your quick card effectiveness by 10% and your NP gauge by 50% at the start of the battle. It'll also increase iron drops and Ishka alloy drops by 1, and if you limit break it, it'll increase your quick card effectiveness by 15%, start you off with 60% NP charge at the beginning of the battle, and increase iron and Ishka drops by 2. This is very strong on quick servants with strong noble phantasms. Okita, Skahawk, Jack, Caesar, and Ushi especially love this craft essence. Let's move on to the event shop craft essence, which is Chaldea Lifesavers. It will apply Guts 1 time, reviving you with 1 HP, and increase your NP gain by 15%. It'll also increase oil and cement drops by 1. If you limit break it, it'll increase your NP gain by 20% and increase oil and cement drops by 2. I should also mention that this craft essence does boost your health by quite a bit, so it's very strong on more fragile servants like Nightingale and Vlad, who appreciate more NP gain and need more health. It's also great on Jean, but most of all, this is perfect for Anne and Mary Ryder. It is a guaranteed way of getting them at 1 HP to maximize the damage on their Noble Phantasm, and it helps them with NP gain, and it's just a straight up better version of Star of Arturia. So this is worth limit breaking. Speaking of which, let's talk about the event shop. When it comes to the event shop this time around, there's actually going to be 6 different resources that you can trade in for shop items. First up, we have cement, followed by oil, then Rialta alloy, Aeodrum alloy, and Ishka alloy, and then the 6th one is going to be Gaybald replicas. You'll be able to trade in cement for 1 copy of Chaldea Lifesavers, as well as Chaos Claws, Evil Bones, and 3-star foes. You'll be able to trade in oil for another copy of Chaldea Lifesavers, as well as the Black Tallow oil, Ghost Lanterns, Berserker Monuments and Pieces, and 3-star and 4-star EXP. The Realta alloy trades in for yet another copy of Chaldea Lifesavers, Spirit Roots, Chains of Fools, and Rider Monuments and Pieces. Aedrum alloy will trade in for yet another copy of Chaldea Lifesavers, Hearts of a Foreign God, Shell of Recollection, and Caster Monuments and Pieces, while Ishka alloy will trade in for the final copy of Chaldea Lifesavers, as well as Lamps, Pages, and Assassin Monuments and Pieces. Finally, the Gaybald replicas will trade in for extra copies of Skahawk, so this is going to be how you upgrade her Noble Phantasm to NP5. They don't buy anything else except those extra copies. In total, you will need 3,900 bags of cement, 4,900 oil drums, 3,400 pieces of Realta alloy, 3,300 pieces of Aedrum alloy, 3,700 pieces of Ishka alloy, and 4 Gaybald replicas if you want to buy out the entire shop. So we're going to talk about farming those items a little bit later in the video. For now, let's talk more about the concept of this event. The gimmick for this event is the exact same as part 1. You're going to be choosing development options among 3 different choices. It's pretty much the exact same thing, and it has the same mechanics. This time around, there's going to be 12 developments instead of 15, so it's a bit shorter. Again, they have no gameplay effect, but you get unique scenes depending on what you pick. So as yet another example, you might have to pick between 3 different bridges that require 3 different types of resource, and you can pick based on who's offering it to you or how you want your colony or island to develop. Just like last time, you can also reset development after you finish everything to go back and do it all over again to get additional scenes. However, in addition to this, of course you're still going to get the 20 mana prisms after each development, but you're also going to get a crystal lore at the very end. And just like last time, completing different developments will unlock new story missions, which will unlock more areas and more difficulties. Just to cover all of that, after you beat Chapter 1, you're unlocking Chapter 2. If you beat Chapter 2, you'll unlock Development Planning 1. After beating Chapter 3, you're going to unlock the Extreme and Explosion difficulties for each free quest. After beating Chapter 4, you're going to unlock Development Planning 6 and the Reconstructed City and Polluted Zone areas. After beating Chapter 5, you'll unlock Development Planning 10. After beating Chapter 6, you'll unlock Development Planning 12. And after beating Chapter 7, you will unlock the Destruction difficulty for all the free quests. Exactly the same as Part 1. So let's move on to talking about the story itself. And the story is where things get a little bit more interesting. It's pretty much the same layout as last time. 8 story chapters. They're unlocked by doing more development quests, so that part is the same. Where it does get different is the story is quite a bit harder this time around. Again, there's going to be mostly Berserker enemies. A lot of them have a lot more HP, between 150,000 and 200,000 HP, so significant step up from Part 1 in terms of difficulty. There's also going to be Assassins and Archer enemies, as well as a couple of Rider bosses with over 200,000 HP, and a Caster boss with over 180,000 HP. So for this time, I do recommend having at least level 60 servants, to give yourself an easier time going through the story. It is noticeably harder. If you beat London, I think you have no problem beating this event. Despite the harder difficulty though, there's not going to be as many battles. A lot of the story is just going to be story and not fighting. So there's a lot fewer battles this time around, but those few battles will be a lot more challenging. As far as recommended servants go, I recommend bringing strong assassins to take care of those rider bosses. So specifically Jinkei, Serenity, 100-Faced Hassan, and Skahawk Assassin are great for this. You'll want some Lancers like Ku and Romulus and Leonidas to deal with the few archer enemies that show up, and then strong riders like Ushiwakamaru or Medusa for the caster boss. And then for dealing with those high HP berserkers, I highly recommend bringing Kyohime, Robin Hood, David, or Lu Bu. They are fantastic for killing berserkers. After you complete the story, you will unlock Skahawk permanently. She'll become a permanent servant for you after beating story chapter 8. You also get a grail for beating the story, so it's a very worth it to complete the story because you're going to get a grail and those are super limited. In addition, once you beat chapter 3, you're going to unlock the extreme and explosion difficulties. So again, very similar to part 1, it'll unlock new difficulties for the free quests, which in turn will be better for farming. Beating Chapter 4 will unlock 2 new free quest areas to farm, Reconstructed City and Polluted Zone, again just like how Part 1 unlocked Primeval Forest and the Mountains. And finally, beating Chapter 7 is going to unlock the hardest free quest difficulty, which is Destruction. So this whole structure does mirror Part 1, and the Destruction difficulty is going to be the best place for farming those resources. So let's talk about farming strategy. The strategy for farming the development materials for Part 2 is pretty similar to the strategy from Part 1. First off, you're still going to want to roll the friend point gacha to get as many of that 3-star craft essence as possible. It'll help you a lot with farming. And then your priority is going to be finishing off the development quest and the story. You're going to want to finish the development quest and the story first before you even start thinking about clearing out the shop. So make sure your resources go towards that. Then you're going to want to hit up getting that craft essence first before you buy anything else from the shop. Make sure you finish buying the event craft essence, and then you can go ahead and buy from the shop based on what Ascension materials that you need the most. So again, roll the gacha for that 3-star craft essence, prioritize doing the story and development quest with your resources, then purchase the event craft essence, and then finish out the shop. Do not worry about clearing out the shop until you unlock the final difficulty after beating the story. The reason why is that the destruction difficulty is actually the best place to farm. You'll have a much easier time. Thankfully, just like with part 1, we do have a ton of ways to get bonuses to our drops, namely from the craft essences and the servants. Looking at the craft essences first, of course you're going to want to use the 3-star craft essence to boost the Rialta alloy drops. You're going to want to use Meat Wars to boost the Aerodrum alloy drops, and you're going to want to use Knights of Marines to boost the Ishka alloy drops. On top of that, the craft essences from part 1 will also boost your drops. So Shiny Goddess will also boost Rialta alloy drops, Twilight Memory will also boost Aerodrum alloy drops, and Pirates Party will boost Ishka alloy drops. So you should have plenty of resources, and the Shopcraft Essence will be boosting your oil and cement drops, just like how the Shopcraft Essence from part 1 boosted water and food drops. Now, for those of you who are still farming part 1, it is worth noting that the new craft essences also boost drops for iron, stone, and wood. So the 3-star craft essence will boost wood drops, Meat Wars will boost stone drops, and Knights of Marines will boost iron drops. So just in case you need to go backwards and farm part 1, you can even use these new craft essences to farm part 1. And just like before, the servants will also give bonus drops. For oil and cement drops, these are your bonus servants that you're going to want to use. For the Rialta alloy drops, these are the bonus servants. And for the Ishka alloy and Aerodrum drops, these are the bonus servants. So now with all of that out of the way, let's talk about what actual free quests you have to farm for these materials. There's only one spot to farm for each item. Specifically, you're going to want to farm the coast for cement, the reconstructed city for oil, the cave for the Ishka alloy, the underground factory for the Aerodrum alloy, and the ruins for the Rialta alloy. The only difference is that their best farming spot before Chapter 7 is the explosion difficulty, and the best farming spot after Chapter 7 is the destruction difficulty. Of course, the destruction difficulty is the best place to farm. However, it is worth noting that it is also good to farm the explosion difficulty if your team is better built for handling it. A lot of the destruction difficulty free quests are very difficult, even more difficult than the part 1 versions of the events, the storm quests, and a lot of people will simply not have the servants and the team to handle that kind of quest. And if that's the case for you and you cannot consistently beat a very difficult destruction quest, then I highly recommend just doing the explosion version of the quest. It's easier, you'll get less drops, but it's worth it for consistency. So taking a look at each of the nodes, you'll notice that the coast is the best place for cement. It has a lot of assassin enemies, a couple of saber enemies, and on the explosion difficulty, you're going to be facing Orion, while on the destruction difficulty, you'll be facing Raiko and Jack. The Ruins are where the Rialta alloy drops, and you're going to be facing only Saber enemies. In the Explosion difficulty, you're going to be facing Uriel, while in the Destruction difficulty, you're going to be facing Jolter and Karna, so significantly harder. The Underground Factory is going to be the best spot to farm the Aerodrome alloys. You're going to be facing a lot of Lancer enemies there, and if you're doing the Explosion version of the quest, you're going to be facing a Demon at the end, while if you're doing the Destruction version, you're going to be facing a Demon and Arjuna. The Cave is going to be the best place to farm the Ishka alloys, and it's going to be all Saber enemies. In the Explosion version, you're just going to be facing a Spriggan, while in the Destruction version, you're going to be facing a Spriggan and Sanzo. Reconstructed City is the best place to farm the Oil Drums. You're going to be facing a mix of Archer and Saber enemies, and if you're doing the Explosion version, you're going to be facing Da Vinci at the end, while if you're doing the Destruction version, you're going to be facing Tesla and Edison. And much like the Mountain in Part 1, the Polluted Zone drops a little bit of everything. I do not recommend farming the Polluted Zone because the drops are random. There's not really any point to farming it because it's just easier to target the area that drops what you want so you can build a team to maximize efficiency. So unless you're farming for the Magic Lamp Ascension item or the Forbidden Pages, I would advise against farming the Polluted Zone. Now let's talk about the teams that I recommend bringing to these fights. First, we're going to talk about the Explosion version, and then we'll talk about the Destruction version. So, recommended teams for the Explosion difficulty, the easier of the two. For the Coast, you're going to want to bring Karna and Kyo Lancer. They're going to be fantastic for this, because you're going to be facing against Orion. You'll also want an AoE caster, so highly recommend Liz, so she can clear up all the assassin enemies. For the Oil, you're going to be farming Reconstructed City, and I highly recommend bringing a Rider, so that you can take care of Da Vinci. Kentucky Rider is by far the best choice for this, but so are Ann and Mary and Drake. All of them will give you oil drop bonuses, and then of course Lancers and Archers for clearing up these smaller enemies. The Cave is for the Ishka alloys. You're going to want to bring Arturia Archer. Now this one's important because the Cave has only Saber enemies, and there's only one Archer that gives a bonus, and that is Archer Arturia, so you're almost kind of forced to bring her. Of course, if you don't have her, you can also bring a Berserker to also do the job. Ku Alter is great for this because he also gets a bonus. For the Aerodrome alloy, you're going to want to farm the Underground Factory, and because you're going to be facing a Caster Demon, it's important to have a single target rider, aka Ozymandias. You can also bring Santa Alter because she's also a strong rider, and you're going to need some Sabers to clear out the enemies here. They're mostly Lancer enemies, so Nero and Nero Bride are perfect for this, as is Gawain and Siegfried. And finally, for the Rialta alloy in the Ruins, there's going to be a ton of Saber enemies, so you're going to want an Archer. That's why Orion is there. But you're also going to need a way of dealing with Uriel, so make sure you have a strong Lancer. Obviously, Lancer Arturia and Arturia Alter are perfect because they also give bonuses to the drops here. But if you don't have either of them, then make sure you go with Vlad. Now let's take a look at farming the Destruction version of each of these quests, which is again significantly harder. For the Coast and Cement farming, you're going to want to bring Okita because she gives a bonus to Cement and she is a strong single target servant, perfect for taking out Raiko. And you can bring Liz to take care of Jack and the other assassin enemies. And if you don't have either of them, then make sure you bring Herc. For the Oil in the Reconstructed City, the best person to bring is Jolter because she does give you a bonus and she can take out both Edison and Tesla pretty easily. If you have Kyohime Lancer or Karna, there's another great choice to bring with you, as is Kentoki and Ibaraki. And to take care of Edison, bring Rider Kentoki or Drake or Ann and Mary. For the Ishka alloy in the Cave, again, you're going to want to bring Arturia for the same exact reason. All Saber enemies, she has a bonus here for Ishka drops. And to take care of Sanzo, you're going to want to use a Rider, so Meb. Ushi specifically is very great for this as well. And if you don't have either Maeve or Ushi, then definitely go with Ku Alter. And Martha isn't bad here either. For the Aerodrome alloys in the Underground Factory, you need a Saber to take care of the two Lancers, so AoE Sabers are better here. I would highly recommend Gawain or Nero. And you're still going to need a Rider to take care of the Demon, so Ozymandias is the ideal person for this, as is Santa Alter. And then bring Bryn or Ku for dealing with Arjuna. And finally, for the Rialta alloy in the Ruins, this is going to be significantly harder because you're going to be up against Jolter and Karna. You're going to want an Archer to take care of the Saber enemies, so Orion is your best choice, but in the actual fight against Jolter and Karna, a strong Saber like Altera, Saber Alter, or Shiki can kill Karna, but for dealing with Jolter, your only real option if you want to be efficient, is Vlad. I highly recommend grabbing a Vlad from your support list. And by the way guys, if you're filling out your support list, make sure you put Vlad on it because a lot of people are going to be using him. He is simply just the best way for dealing with Jolter. Okay, with all that cleared up, let's talk about the bonus quest. It's going to be the same as part 1. Every single day, we'll be getting a new quest that will unlock, and it will reward you with development materials like extra alloys, extra cement, extra oil, etc. But it also rewards you with a ton of QP, so make sure you bring a Mona Lisa with you to that quest, and make sure you take a friend who has Mona Lisa so you can maximize your QP. They won't disappear until the end of the event, but they can only be done once, just like with part 1. On top of that, there's going to be 4 more brilliant summer quests. These are the quests that are themed after a specific summer servant and reward you with a summoning ticket for completing them. They're going to unlock after you finish chapter 4 and chapter 5 of the story. There's one for each servant: Skyhawk Assassin, Caster Marie, Ruler Martha, and Archer Arturia. Completing each one will give you a summoning ticket, so I highly recommend you do it. After you complete all of the brilliant summer quests, you will also unlock additional quests for Skyhawk Assassin. This is kind of like side quests. And completing these additional quests will reward you with Gaybog replicas. This is the only way you can get Gaybog replicas, and those are what you use to trade in for additional copies of Skyhawk Assassin so that you can NP5 her. So make sure you absolutely finish all the brilliant summer summoning ticket quests so that you can get the special Skyhawk versions of the quest that reward you with Gaybog replicas. You'll need them. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Ascension material farming. Now this infographic is brought to you by Lord Ashura, so great thanks to him. He does a ton of work for event guides. I'll link to his guide in the description below, so show him some love. But if you want to do some Ascension material farming for this event, then just know that you can farm the coast for shells, gears, and void dust. You can farm Reconstructed City for chains and void dust. You can farm the cave for shells and spirit roots. You can farm the underground factory for shells, homunculus babies, and hearts. You can farm the ruins for shells, chains, and void dust. And you can farm the contaminated zone for shells, pages, and lamps. The lamps at the contaminated zone actually have a 25% drop rate in the destruction difficulty, so extremely high drop rate for lamps. The hearts in the underground factory have a 20% drop rate, so again, very high drop rate for hearts. And the spirit roots in the cave also have a 20% drop rate on the destruction difficulty, so very high there. And for those of you who need chains, make sure you farm them at the Reconstructed City. They have a 37% drop rate on the destruction difficulty, so that's going to be the best place to get them. And if you would like to see more detail on all of those statistics, then again, I point you to the description to check out Lord Ashura's guide. Show him some love. And that about wraps everything up I have to say about this part of the event. It is extraordinarily similar to part 1, so it's not very difficult to grasp if you were able to complete part 1. And I wish anyone rolling on the gacha good luck. I hope you guys get Archer Arturia or Caster Marie or Ruler Martha or whoever you're going for. And if this guide did help you, please make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. It really helps us out, and I make content like this regularly all the time. Look forward to those additional spotlights for the new servants coming out later on this week. If you haven't already, do join the party over at our Discord, follow us on Twitter, and follow us on Twitch. And I will see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Good luck everyone, Soberoni out. Later.